Hello, this is Kade, and today we are going to be, of course, quite naturally discussing the new Aegis Dynamics Eclipse. So Project Eclipse was teased to us last week, and of course it was done in a very particular style that some of you might recognize from Northrop Grumman, in the way they like to announce their stealth bombers. And I will say it looked absolutely amazing under that lovely covering, but of course when that was taken off it was an absolute beautiful ship. But beauty is one thing. What we're going to be looking at is a bit more like what can we expect from it. And like my previous videos, to do that I will be comparing it as best as I can to current day examples, and then also be looking at how it will perform within the universe itself, and who should really buy it as a player. So when we're looking at this thing, and we're going to say compare it to what we have around in current day or slightly past, it's a bit tricky, because the Eclipse falls a little bit in the middle and we don't really have a equivalent to it. I mean, when you're looking at stealth aircraft, quite famously the F-117 or the B-2 Spirit, like one is really a strike fighter, barely any payload, and the other is just really a heavy strategic bomber. And the Eclipse is neither. And the same goes, when you can also take in the B-1 and the B-52, more strategic bombers, both of them far higher payloads. And it's like, when you compare the Eclipse and you take a look at the Gladiator, and especially, of course, the Retaliator, it doesn't really line up when you look at the payload-wise. So I think you can best compare it when you look at real life as it was a stealth F-111 Aardvark, which is really the closest I can get to it's a bit of listed as a fighter bomber, interdictor, a bit of a multi-role type of plane. But I think payload-wise it's the closest what you really can get comparison-wise. So it's a bit hard to really say like, yeah, you can say it is this thing in real life, which I think is quite interesting. So I already mentioned the payload, like we're talking about 3 size 9 torpedoes as a maximum payload. I assume like with all the other missile systems you can also go and install brackets that will hold multiple smaller missiles, which can also offer a lot of gameplay opportunities. But when you're really looking at that torpedo loadout, the size 9 torpedoes, I don't know from my head which ones the Retaliator have. I think it might be slightly bigger or roughly the same. But either way, it's a fairly substantial payload. But with that payload comes down very few weapon systems. We're talking just 2 size 2 hardpoints. And that's it. So it's absolutely not a dogfighter. So what do we have then? We got fairly big payload, fairly poor weapons, but we also have stealth. And stealth is really this ship's entire game. I mean, it's all over the branding, like this thing is a stealth ship. I mean, the commercials, everything was like it was spy footage from like the Russians spying on the American stealth planes. And being a stealth craft means it has a bit of a different role, I think, within the universe than a Retaliator would have or a Gladiator would have. With the former being really the heavy bomber, long range, like screw whatever the hell is gonna come up, we're just gonna nuke it to living hell and back. And the other one being more designed to go after medium targets in groups and flying along with the fighters and things like that, and then also sticking within the dogfight. So stealth, fairly decent payload, poor weapon systems. I think what we're ending up with here is not really a bomber as it is being branded, but more a strike aircraft. Perhaps a tactical bomber, if you'd like to use some made up term there. I think this ship is just all about getting in there and getting those precision strikes in, using that stealth to get in as close as possible to your target, getting those drops off and giving them just no time at all to react. And that makes it just, as I say, it's really an ideal strike aircraft. It's going to be absolutely useless in a defensive operation. I mean, these are offensive weapons. Well, it's quite interesting. However, being a stealth strike aircraft comes at a substantial cost. If we're going to be looking at the flight ready cost, it's more expensive up front than a Retaliator. Like the full-flown bomber version of Retaliator is cheaper in the upfront cost than the Eclipse will be. Because right now, yes, you can get the Eclipse for 215 wall bond or 275 with credits, which is equal to the Retaliator. But they estimate the flight ready price to be $330, which is substantially more than a Retaliator is. So why is a smaller ship that much more expensive? Well, again, we're looking back at the stealth nature. This thing has stealth everything, stealth power core, stealth engines, just everything about this ship is built around stealth. And there's one very common factor about stealth that you can find also in today's stealth aircraft. Cost. They're incredibly expensive to build, and they're even more expensive to operate. And that later one is going to be a fairly tricky one, because that's something we don't really have an eye on yet in game. I mean, how much are ships going to be in operation? I mean, are we really going to say a stealth ship that's taking damage will cost more to repair than a non-stealth ship? All of these things are just up in the air. But if you're going with the full-on immersion that we like to see within this game and that Chris Roberts wants to get within the game, I think it's a fair assumption that stealth aircraft will be more expensive to operate. So, if they're so expensive to operate, then what are we going to do with them? Well, in case of the Navy, like the Navy has a Navy budget. They can just say like, well, we got this many of them, so that's how many we can operate, and that's how many, likely, preferably would have twice the number, but that's what we got. Because that's, you know, how militaries work. They always want more, but they just got to make do with what they can afford. So the Navy, of course, can always keep those things probably within operational capacity, because there's, I think there will be quite important weapon systems, so they will have priority over certain other weapon systems in keeping them maintained and operational. And of course, as we read in the lore, like these things are all about the precision strikes. Like they go in, stay undetected, drop the payloads, and get the hell out of there. And that's what the Navy will continue to be using them for. However, there's also one other thing that has been tingling me a little bit. Like releasing a stealth craft of this seemingly advanced nature to the public made me think of something that somebody always said up to me about the Israeli military. And he said whenever they would show something to the public, like, look at this amazing weapon system we got, the only reason that they would show it to the public is because they already had an improved version or a complete new weapon system that fulfilled that same role, but better. And that one they would not show to the public. So I think that the Navy might just be hiding out some other things from us. You know, maybe somebody will be able to sneakily snap some shots of those in the universe in the years to come. But that aside, Navy use is one thing. What are we civilians going to do with them? And yeah, who is really going to be buying these things? Well, to me, you know, again, we're talking a military ship, so that will limit your market quite substantially. So, of course, the primary users of this type of ship, you know, that will have the most use out of it, will be private military corporations and bounty hunters. Why bounty hunters? Because stealth. You know, if you can strike a target without it knowing that you're going to strike it, all the nicer for you. And you know, if you're working with a larger bounty organization, you can take on larger contracts. Like they tell you, you know, pirates have been operating from a, you know, salvage Javelin destroyer in this and this sector. You know, you get maybe a contract for a lot of credits to take that destroyer out. So you know, get something stealthy in there, not the Eclipse, something smaller, scout it out, where is it, get a bunch of Eclipses ready, jump towards it, come out of jump at a fair distance away from it, set your cruise, power up full, maximum speed, and just power down all systems. Because stealth is nice, getting no emissions out of it makes it even better. And you will just cruise in total blackout with a ship that has a very, very low radar signature towards your target, towards this Javelin destroyer. Nobody's detecting you, you're not emitting anything. The radar is just, maybe you see something, but it just writes it off as noise because it's so small it can't be anything else. And then when you're getting that close, you suddenly power it all up, weapon bays are open, fully of torpedoes is going out, you flip them around, either jump out or you burn out to a safe distance, and once you're at speed, shut down again, you flip your ship around, you continue drifting, and with your nose pointed towards your now destroyed target, hopefully, and you just shut down all systems again and just vanish again into blackness, because no sensor is going to be able to detect you. So I think bounty hunters can make some really good use of this ship. Even more so if what I assume will be that we can also employ, instead of size 9 torpedoes, that we can also have multiple smaller missiles in there on the pylons. And in that case, it can also be ideal at hunting down, more medium-sized ships like Freelancer, Constellations, Retaliators, and such. So, in the hands of bounty hunters, it can be a very, very powerful tool. Again, a very, very expensive tool. So, if you're going to be bounty hunting with this thing, you do want to have the best contracts out there, because otherwise it likely will not cover the operational costs. So, besides bounty hunters, of course, private military corporations, they can really use the ship as was intended to, get those first strikes in stealthy as possible, maybe knock a hole in enemy defenses and pour in with the rest of your forces afterwards. Still an expensive tool to use, but it's a tool that can give you just so many options. I mean, being able to get that first strike off, ideally unnoticed, is just such a powerful advantage in any combat scenario. I mean, the general rule is the one who shoots first wins. Because even if you don't completely destroy an enemy, you will just create total panic, because suddenly you're under attack from nowhere, close, everything is going wrong around you. So even if the Eclipse strike doesn't really completely destroy your ship and maybe only damage it, there's just such panic going on, because scrambling of things going on. But maybe a second strike that does not have to be stealth, or maybe another stealth strike, just in case, comes in and just wipes you out anyway. So PMC's bounty hunters can make really good use of it. Of course, you can also say on the other side of the law that pirates perhaps could make good use of this ship. But I think the problem will be, if you're going to use this on the other side of the law, is just getting the parts. Because the Navy is not just going to put these parts purely there on the open market for every random idiot to buy. It would not be surprising if they keep the part supply relatively limited and exclusive to certified owners and things like that. So yeah, some parts will be able to leak through the gaps, of course, and go into the illegal market, but they will likely fetch an absolute premium price. So I think for pirates, yes, it's possible, but I don't think it will be reliable. And reliability could be, but especially from an economic standpoint, I don't think you will be making a lot of money using this ship, because the operational cost will be too high, and if you take any damage or any parts wear out, it will just be so expensive to replace and repair that ship. I don't see it to be very much worthwhile. For the solo players out there, I don't think this is the best ship for you. I mean, yeah, you can probably get some really nice strikes on maybe solo bounty hunting. You can make it work with, if they give you smaller missiles to be using. But again, you're talking about such an expensive ship to operate. And that's where the larger organizations really come in, because they can help cover the operational costs of ships like these. They can just say like, okay, we want these ships fielded and deployed. We know they're expensive to operate, so we afford some of the costs. We say we handle all the repairs, all the maintenance for people that own these ships. And that way you can make it interesting enough for people to actually use these kind of ships. It's very much like in EVE Online, how larger alliances actually just cover the losses in combat of the pilots. You know, if there's a large fleet battle, everybody pretty much flies with relatively, you know, mix of T1, T2 cheap loadouts into combat, because you know you're likely going to lose ships anyway, and then the alliances just reimburse these ships to the players that have been participating and that lost their ships in these official operations. And that's what a larger PMC or bounty hunter organizations can do. But when you're solo, losing a ship like this will just be a really, really expensive loss. So not something that I would advise anybody to buy. So yeah, if you're a part of a larger organization and they say we can make use of this, I'd say absolutely buy one, because it's going to be a really, really powerful tool. But only if you're in a combat-oriented organization. Because again, you know, if you're in anything else, then this ship really does not have a use for you. If you're in mining or industry or ferrying goods or people around, this is just not a useful ship. I mean, it's a strike ship. You know, it's a strike craft. It's designed to take the initiative, blow something up, and it will never really work in a defensive posture. There are just really much better ships out there for those kind of roles. So that's my opinion regarding the Aegis Dynamics Eclipse. I really think it's an absolutely beautiful ship, and I am very, very much tempted to get some upgrades from one of my ships towards this one. I'd love to do more of them, but budget reasons are also getting a bit tight at the moment, so we can't really do that. Anyhow, I hope you found this informative. If you got any feedback or discussion points to bring up around any of this, please leave them in the comments. I'm always trying to improve on these videos, despite the fact that they're being a little bit rambly. I'm hoping that keeping it a bit more short these times, a bit more concise, making a few notes. And besides all of that, thank you so much for watching. This was Kade, and I'll see you around next time.